I come from a little place called Mesquite, Nevada. It's about 80 miles northeast of Las Vegas. 86% of my electorate is out of the urban area of Las Vegas. There's 17 counties in Nevada, 6 of which I have of rural counties, which equates to about 290 miles north to south by about 500 miles east to west. So I have a large rural district. 86% of that is held by the federal government. So it's pretty easy to try to evaluate where the needs are in the urban areas. Matter of fact, the state legislature, which I was part of last time, created an indexing tax which helps fund those projects within Clark County for the next 3 years because we can't wait on the federal government any longer. I'd like to ask each of you kind of a little different question. Being a member of the Regional Transportation Commission for over 14 years in the Clark County area myself, and being a past Public Works Director for about 7 years, I found that it's a lot easier to maintain than to reconstruct. Have any of you got the same beliefs in that? Or as maintaining highways versus...
Congressman, thank you for the question. Yes, maintaining is much simpler than reconstruction or starting construction over. But the problem is in some of our agriculture areas in the Midwest is that we don't have wide enough shoulders on those roads for the farm equipment of the 21st century. So we have to make some decisions on which roads we are going to reconstruct and what roads that we just overlay.
The reason I asked the question is, you know, with that 86% of that being held by federal government, it's hard for us to make a decision. Do we go out in the rurals and try to upgrade our infrastructure out there that are basically held by the federal government or the interstate highway system, NDOT, so to speak, or do we try to do things at home? So without having a funding bill in place, it leaves us, we try to determine, do we fix the problems within the urban corridors immediately because we need to make sure we have that economic improvement because that's what attracts economics to your community is a good infrastructure, or do we let things fall apart, which, you know, most of that interstate system we have within Nevada goes across federal lands, which I think is a responsibility of the federal government to take care of that. But on the other hand, it's one of those corridors where it packs all the produce back and forth from California clear across the Midwest, which in turn comes back to the Midwest to the West Coast with that grains and other. So I guess what I'm getting at is, do you feel like we're failing our job? Because we got to do something quick, in my opinion, because you can't plan down the road without a long-term spending bill. Yes, sir.
Well, I think you're spot on. And for local communities, whether it's a county or a state, they're trying to determine what do we need to do to maintain and improve the system. But in order to decipher what you need to do, you need to know what they are going to do. And they is the federal government. And so, you know, back to at least be predictable. You know, your whole point about maintaining the system, you know, the nice thing about these assets is that they're not like cell phones. What you purchased 10 years ago is obsolete today. I mean, these are bridges that and roads that if you maintain them, yes, eventually they do need to be replaced, but you can dramatically elongate the useful life of these assets if you do preventative maintenance. And in many areas of the country, we've failed to do so.
Mr. Trombino, your testimony, you said, I think you were spot on with the federal and state relationship and having flexibility. And I think you said that Iowa was able to be creative with folks and we have to have no money, I guess. With our $18 trillion of debt, we need to be creative. Could you kind of elaborate on some of that creativity that you had?
Yeah, a couple things I want to say. The first thing was stability in funding is the most important thing as for us to maintain the system, right? Because we want to extend life overall. And I think this gets to Mr. Steenhoek and what he was saying from an asset perspective, managing the system. We have things that are in good condition, we have things that are in fair condition, we have things that are in poor condition. If we chase the poor, we don't have enough money. and what will happen is the good and fair will actually turn into poor. And so that strategy is very important for us to focus on the good and fair, extend the life of that system long term, and ultimately that will free up dollars, and we've shown that by just making changes in the types of treatments that we use to maintain the system, to expand it. We were able to save $270 million over 10 years that will actually bend the life of the curve and allow us to use it towards those poor infrastructure. So those are the types of things that we're doing. In addition, I would say our supply chain is really the key ingredient, because it's going to allow us to look at bridges differently. Just as Commissioner Fox was talking about bridges with maybe 10 cars a day, but really intensive times of the year, well, maybe we should really treat those differently, and a supply chain will allow us to look at those things differently in the future.
Thank you, and I yield back.